Hello, everybody, and we are coming with another episode of our show, Love It or Shove It. And our topic for today is love and conflict resolution. I'm here with my co host, Rona Jill, and we have the guest, Jeff. Jeff, just introduce yourself and say a little bit about what you're doing.
Before that, I just want to say that intro was awesome. That was so cool.
Thank
Uh,
you.
yeah, my name is Jeff Yukikazu Sera, and I am a self-development sensei and a Reiki practitioner. And I support individuals with the healing of the physical body, the mental state, and our energetic being.
Awesome. Yes. And today we are just going to dive into love and conflict resolution. We're just going to share the tips. We are going to share the stories and for the audience to understand that they are not alone. We are all in this together. So, Bruno, when I'm talking about love and conflict resolution, what comes to your mind?
It comes to my mind that the majority of people don't know what that is. Because I think that we don't have conflict resolution. We have conflict avoidance nowadays. A lot of people, they avoid the conflicts and they delay what's inevitable, right? So a lot of people, they delay what's inevitable, right? Instead of just being straightforward with it, right? And because avoiding what's inevitable, not only is going to happen, but it will happen in ways that didn't need to happen. In terms of, like, for example, because if you let it build up, right, it's just going to make you more angry and more angry and more angry and more anxious and more anxious and more anxious, when the same thing could have been said in one way, but because it lasted weeks or months or days within you, or years, right, it came out in a very not so pleasant way, let's say. So avoiding conflict and avoiding the inevitable simply because, like, oh, it's not that important, or it doesn't have to be treated now, right, also shows that it also shows where people's priorities really are. It also shows what people care about the most. It shows what people value the most, and if the conflicts they have in their relationships are not really a priority, because they think, like, it's not that important to deal with it right now. Not only they're taking it for granted because it is important, but at the same time it shows that their head is not where it should be. Their head is somewhere else. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Jeff, what does it come for you? Conflicts and love, how do they two can live together?
Yeah, I think conflicts are typically a projection. We are typically projecting some type of an insecurity or something that we're unaware of or unwilling to say to our partner, which causes the conflict. And one kind of way that I like to support, my clients and people that I speak with this is to ask the question of, am I coming from love or am I coming from fear? And when fear is driving the conversation, that's typically where the conflict arises, because we're not being 100% honest. We're maybe scratching the surface of it and saying, this is something that bothers me, but I'm making it your fault, your problem, and the situation is external from myself. When we flip that introspectively or inwards and look in the mirror and say, okay, well, when you said or did this, it made me feel this type of way, it creates a different environment or kind of energy in the conversation. It says, hey, I'm not blaming you for this. I'm just sharing my experience. I'm sharing what came up for me, and I would like to have a conversation around it rather than argue about it.
Oh my gosh, this is so powerful. Thanks for sharing, because
Absolutely.
that's true. People don't know how to actually resolve the conflict. And, there is an expression in Russian, they say the first defense is to attack. So in other words, instead of waiting for another person to attack, they choose to be the first one to attack another person. This way they're already like kind of on the course, and they are taking the leadership in their own hands. But in actuality, it's only worsened the situation, because obviously you could say the same sentence, but the tone of the voice makes a big difference. And again, like Jeff mentioned, if you come from the energy of blame, obviously another person is going to push back, because we always mirror each other. So if the person comes with that negative energy, they are going to receive that resentment, and obviously the same way communication. So that's why a lot of people don't even want to communicate, because they are so unskillful in that. They don't know how to speak properly to others. They don't know in what tone to speak, which words to use. And obviously for them, it's easier, like Bruno said, just to just avoid the conflict altogether. And a lot of people just decide to hide and just disappear rather than just facing that fear. Actually, we have to learn how to face the fear and just be able to resolve any kind of conflict, have the conversation, right? Because we are all human beings. It's all about understanding. It's all about communication. Because if the communication is not there, if it's broken, not any of the relationship could last, because everybody's gonna walk with their own thoughts, with their own insecurities or unhappiness. But if two people don't bring it together for whatever reason, right? Maybe one person doesn't want to go into the conflict because the other person doesn't know how to handle themselves properly, to be mature about it, and just could, like get angry, could get upset. There are women who might throw the dishes. The man could just, like running with the bat. So you never know, right? What kind of people you are dealing with. But the point is that a lot of people are just fearful, right? So in order not to get into any kind of mess, they just decide not to actually speak up.
I think we're not taught those things. We're not given the tools to address it. And
Absolutely.
a lot of being able to communicate clearly and effectively is to be able to really understand yourself on a deeper level. And it's scary, right, to recognize and admit those things. Not only does society not teach us those things, but our own mental state kind of prevents it, right? Our ego comes up to defend ourselves emotionally, which then self-sabotages the depths of what the truth is. So if somebody comes home late and I say, I'm so mad at you because you're home late and I was wondering where you were, and then you get into an argument over that, the same conversation could be, hey, I was really worried and concerned. So again, coming from fear, coming from love, when we come from that love and speak to the truth of it, which was, I was worried, not I'm mad, it churns into that because we're not aware of what's really happening internally. But the more you understand yourself, the more you're able to communicate those things to your partner, which creates a better, healthier relationship. And that's why it's important to really do a lot of individual, independent work, stepping into relationships so that you can then do that work with your partner. A lot of people look at it as, let me find a partner so then I can be happy and I'll figure those things out. And the reality is we have to figure that out on our own first to step into those healthy relationships.
Oh my God, I just love it. Which, like so true, that just proves the point that always put yourself in the shoes of the person you're talking to. Like, how would you feel if you were hearing the same words, right, that you are expressing yourself? Like, would it be okay for you? And when we can actually put ourselves in the shoes of others, it's easier to actually navigate and to be more mindful and realize that obviously you want to change the tone of your voice. You want to show that you care more than you just like trying to, rule or, express your negative feelings or thoughts. So it's very important. And what comes to my mind is active listening. Bruno, what do you think about active listening?
I think active listening is I think it's super important. I mean, just to observe and to see what people say, what they don't say, and how they really are and behave. I think um, learning how to, like, it's very important to talk and to speak, but knowing also how to respect other people's like moment, and like um, letting them have their time, and they let me have my time, right? And that's how effective communication that's how effective communication works, right? And that's how conflict resolution also works, right? Because you don't resolve conflict by, like, saying, like, throwing dishes and stuff. You resolve conflict by learning how to temporize, the time where you talk, right? And like letting each other finish, right? The person starts, and when the person finishes, the other person starts. There's no cutting it, in between, right? Because if the person has something to say, we need to respect that person in the talking, right? And because we respect the person, we listen as well, right? Active listening is basically that. Is I think more than that, active listening for me is like fully devoting the focus of your time to listening to the person and trying to really understand. Because sometimes, we're listening, but we have our mind in the moon, or we have our mind in Saturn or Venus or Mars or whatever, right? Our body is there, but we're not really focusing on what the person is saying. And I think, like, really one thing is listening, right? Because there's the listening where it comes at 200 and leaves at 500, right? And then there's the listening where, like, you actually captate, like, you take in the majority of the information that was said to you and it was passed to you, right? And I think that's what active listening is, right? Is really like paying really like attention to what the person is saying and really acknowledging the person's feelings, and yeah, and then really kind of participate after, when you start to engage with the person, not with the listening but more with the talking.
Awesome. Jeff, what would you share about active listening?
I think one of the important parts of active listening is to repeat back your interpretation of what someone just shared. Number one, to show that you were listening and you captured the message. And number two, for clarification. We all have different ways of interpreting things. We have all had our own experiences. So I could say something that could mean something different to both of you. And through the active listening, you repeat back what you heard to make sure we're on the same page. Something you spoke to a little while ago was the empathy. And typically when we empathize, what we're doing is I'm putting myself into somebody else's shoes, but I'm doing that as me. So it's my interpretation, or this is what I would have done if I was you, right? If I was you. What we're missing is, well, you're not them. So what would you do if they were them? If you were them as them. And so with the active listening portion of it, that allows you to really get to that next level and that next step to make sure you're really understanding what someone's communicating. Because, it could be misinterpreted, especially in relationships, to say, I wanted you to do this or that. And what you're hearing may be something completely different. And I've watched this unfold in front of me when a couple is saying something. They're saying the exact same thing, but they're using different words. So they're arguing over the vocabulary. And I'm like, you guys are actually agreeing if you would take a minute to listen from the other side. And so that's where a lot of conflict comes from, where most people are typically in agreement. They're just using different words. So through active listening, we can resolve a good portion of the arguments that don't need to happen.
So beautifully put. And what comes for me is the compromise and negotiation. What do you think about it, Bruno?
Oh, I thought the question was for Jeff.
I mean, we all are gonna take our round.
No, yeah, because no, I think I totally agree with Jeff when it comes like to the when he talked about about the empathy, right? Like like putting yourself in the shoes of the other person, and what would you do, right, if you were in the situation of that person? And I think that is one of the best, if not the best thing you can do, in my personal belief, to really understand what the person is going through, right? Because we have this idea that we're kind of all different, and stuff, but the reality is that we all feel emotions the same way. The problem may be different, and some problems may affect us in different ways, but we all feel our emotions the same way. You don't have a group of humans that are happy when they're angry. When people are angry, they are angry, right? That's why you call a person angry. You don't have people that are angry when they're happy. When people are happy, they're happy, right? So certain things can make you feel happy that for other people doesn't, and another things can make you feel angry that for other people don't. But anger and happiness, plus all the other emotions that exist, are all felt. We all feel them the same way, right? Um, but even, and that's why, for example, a lot of times when it comes to conflict resolution, even for the people that try to put themselves in their situation, on the person's situation, is a bit tough, because again, right, what upsets me may not upset Irene and Jeff, and what upsets Irene and Jeff may not upset me. So if what doesn't upset me can upset them, if I put myself in their shoes, I'd be like, but I still don't get it. Why? Because what upsets me doesn't upset them, right? So, but even so, that is one of the best ways to like know how the person is feeling, because one of the worst things that in me and Arena, we were talking about that today actually, feeling misunderstood, right? It's like I have this thing where like majority, like all my life, I was kind of like misunderstood. Like I would always be the person like who could help other people, right? Because I would always put myself in other people's shoes, right? I think you should do this and that, or in my personal belief, but then people like wouldn't be able to kind of help me, right? So it's one of those things where I just stopped sharing with people because I'd feel so empty talking to people, right, that wouldn't understand me. So I just try to fix my problems myself, right? And I think that's kind of like a lot of when I understood that like everybody is the same, right? People don't open up, because opening up to somebody who doesn't understand you only makes you feel worse, because it almost makes you feel hopeless, right? Because like if you can't help yourself and people don't understand you, it almost feels like there's no help for you and you can't be fixed, and oh my god, no, right? But it's not true, right? It's just people, if somebody can fix a problem for their life, they most likely, I my personal belief, won't be able to help somebody at 100%. And I was just asking things to the wrong people, right? Because the moment, in my belief, I met the people who kind of like helped me like understand it, like you're not alone, and like which nobody is alone, right? You just have to find the right people, and it may take time, it may not take time, but the right people for you are in the world, right, at this time, because then you wouldn't be alive, right? So yeah, I mean, it's just again like one of those things where conflict resolution is super helpful, because it also like makes you like not feel alone, right? And if somebody doesn't know how to deal with conflict resolution, then you opening up about your problems with those people is, in my personal belief, it was for me, and I believe it is for many people as well, pretty useless. Because if you're opening up about your problems, you want people to kind of help you and give you a word, right? Because you feel a bit hopeless or sad or whatever, and if those people are not even able to help you, and you don't know who else to go to, that's why you hope opening up with that person, because you also trust that person a lot, right? And not even that person can help you. Then yeah, it can be tough, right? But maybe that person is not for you, in terms of like not for you in terms of helping you fix that problem, right? So I think like always choose well the people you open up to when it comes to conflict resolution, whether if it's in love, friendships, family, doesn't matter what, right? Because like for example, we have that phrase, right, where it's better to be alone than with bad company, right? But it's better to not open up than to open up to the wrong people, right? Because it will only make you feel worse. So yeah.
Thank you so much. And you know what it brings for me when you were just sharing, and that's like something that society faces in general, because a lot of people are working and they are not really opening up to anybody, right? Because they don't feel that somebody understand them. They don't feel that there is a support there. So it's very important to kind of seek that guidance and advice and support, because there are so many amazing communities nowadays. There is so much help around, and it's all about just getting into the right tribe, because we are all different, and we are here to support, because we are all connected no matter what. And it's all about just asking for help and seeking that help, right? Because we cannot do it all on our own. It's always better with the body. So, Jeff, what does it bring for you? I just wanted to say that, compromising and just actually negotiating is also part of the process, and you cannot expect the same partner to do this work. Let's say if, like even in my example, I was the one that always, trying to be more kind, trying to work things out. But at some point, you feel like somebody just stepping on your toes. And it's important to also have your own boundaries, because you cannot be that one person that, just solves everything in the family. It takes two.
Yeah.
Jeff, what does it bring for you?
The three things I had written down was compromise, boundaries, and balance. And you have to have all three of those working together. Otherwise, there's an imbalance in the relationship, right? If you're compromising too often and the other person isn't, that's not really compromising. You're not having the boundaries, and you're kind of you're not staying in your power. You're giving away all your power to your partner in that situation. And so you want to be aware of the boundaries that you have and maintaining a balance with everything that you do. Anything that we're working on as individuals requires a level of balance. And so when we compromise, we want to be able to take a look at what our needs are, while also listening to what the needs of our partner are, to make sure that both parties are having their needs met. And if that's not the case, then to reflect and figure out a way to achieve that. Something else that Bruno touched on was finding the right people to feel safe and secure opening up with. And I think a level of that comes from being authentic. When we step into being authentic in who we are rather than people pleasing, we're going to start to attract people that resonate with our message and who we are and our beliefs, and we'll repel the people that aren't aligned with that. That can be scary as you step into that, especially as a people pleaser. And this is me speaking from my own experience, where not wanting to have people be upset with me, or, if a group of people were not to like me, it'd be like the worst thing in the world, versus, okay, that's okay because I'm being authentic, and there's a disalignment, and that's okay. Once you find that kind of group of people, or you start to attract those, then you don't have to have that same kind of concern about, is it safe for me to open up in this space? You automatically know that because you're surrounded by the right people. And again, it takes time, effort, and work to get to that point. But once you do, it's a different environment that you'll find yourself in. In terms of, again, getting there requires a deep level of knowing yourself, to understand yourself, who you are, what your needs are. And love languages is another great area to kind of understand this about yourself. So there's the 5 love languages, but there's also the distinction between the love languages that we give and how we show and express love, and how we receive it. And what I've learned in my experience is the love languages that I emulate and the way that I show love is what I learned from my parents. The way that I receive love is what was lacking growing up as a kid, because there's always kind of, again, there's an imbalance, not through intention or anything, but it's like typically 2 or 3 will be the strong suit and the other ones kind of fall off, not because of choice or anything, but because of their same situation growing up as kids. So it continues to just ripple through where it does this kind of a flip-flop situation. So growing up as a kid, there was a lot of, acts of kindness, there were acts of service, a lot of quality time, but there was a lack of maybe physical touch in a different sense. So my parents would hug me, they would kiss me, but maybe not all the time. It wasn't like every night, where some families do that. And I know that growing up, their parents, it's very hard. Like my grandpa, it's a struggle for him to say I love you. When I end up call with him, I always say I love you, and he always responds back with like, okay, you too, but he won't say the words I love you back. So the words of affirmation were lacking in my parents' upbringing. They tried to do that and emulate that with me, but that's also still an area that I struggle with in terms of giving my love language. But I'm really good at acts of service for others because I watched that and I observed that in my household growing up. That's how we expressed our love. And so at the same time, when I feel the most love, it's when my partner shares words of affirmation with me, because that was what was lacking and what I needed as a child. So being aware of those things allows me to be able to express that to a partner, to come to that compromise, to be like, hey, this is something that I need and require because this is how I feel loved. But if I were unable to communicate that or unaware of it, I may just be upset and lash out or unable to compromise.
That's so beautifully said. Thank you so much, Jeff. And that also brings me down to the conversation about emotional intelligence and maturity, right? Because not many people understand what this is all about. And people are just, reacting all the time rather than just, like responding and reflecting. So this is something that we also learn how to do it, right? Because we didn't come with these skills. Nobody taught us. And, obviously now everything is to the point that we become more aware. We understand that we are in control of our own lives. We are in control of our own emotions. So we grow that awareness in ourselves to the point that we are not going to allow anybody's words or anybody's emotions to overpower us, because we know who we are and we want to be constantly in that balance.
Yeah.
Bruno, what do you think about emotional intelligence?
I think it's I think it's a superpower. And this goes beyond conflict resolution in relationships, really. But this past year, I've dealt with some things where I always wanted to, because you see, like, and this is a lot from this is something that I had to heal from my childhood, right? When it comes to me, like, people always took me for granted. People always took my height for granted, my strength for granted, my knowledge for granted, my everything. Oh, it's not that serious. Oh, it's not this. It's not that. No. My parents, my friends' parents, people in school, my teachers, everybody, right? And it was something that, like, once I grew up and I kind of started like investing a lot in me, in my mind, I always had that thing like, I'm going to prove everyone wrong. Everybody's going to be on my toes. Because you have that anger from the past, right? And I thought that was gone in 2022, but apparently in 2023 it was still there, right? Was one thing is like people saying like some stuff, and it does get to you, right? And you can channel that and use that for your own growth, right? Because it's super smart, right? You either let it go or use it for your own growth, right? You don't like spread the fire and burn everything around you and you end up being the problem. No, you channel it and you use it for your own growth, right? But I understood that, like, that fire spread a lot. That fire spread with strangers, even. And it wasn't really something that I'm proud of. Well, nothing really happened, whatever, but, there was potential. It could have happened. And I'm not responsible for how people behave, but I'm responsible for my own behavior. And I either took part on it or I started it, right? And the reality is that that conflict resolution within me, I haven't resolved the conflict inside of me when it comes to that problem, right? So I wasn't ready to resolve any sort of conflict on the outside, right? Because you're always projecting what's on the inside, right? Even your own happiness, especially your own happiness or your anger, right? So it was one of those things where developing emotional intelligence and self-control, right? And just knowing how to take a deep breath, and right, and really like understanding your value. I think understanding your value, like even like understanding your value on relationships, and friendships and everything, like family stuff, like understanding your value, understanding what's worth your time and your energy. It's like it's because that shows you that that shows you that you have a priority, and your priority is your well-being, right? And the well-being of others around you, not what people say or feel or think about you or whatever, but the people who do care about you, right? And if you care about what the entire world says, then I'm really sorry to say this, but you will always be people's puppet, right? Because that's what people pleasers are. And as much as this sounds like a little bit aggressive and a bit ruthless from my mouth, people pleasers um, don't have it easy in life because they don't really like respect themselves a lot, you know. Because, and why do I say that? But I say that with no experience. I don't think so. I used to be a people pleaser, and it really didn't, you know, benefit me once in my life. It didn't, because when I was a people pleaser, that's when people manipulated me the most, abused me the most, disrespected me the most. And I would always say, "Oh, it's okay, don't worry. Oh, it's this, it's fine." No, 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 no. Because I always wanted to make people happier than me, and I had everybody minus myself, which means I had no one, because the people, or the person who truly not matters, but the person who I should value the most, I didn't, and that's me, right? So to then have learned that, but then this year really figuring out that apparently no, I'm not yet cured, not of the people pleasing, but of a lot of like past experiences that really shaped me, and really like kind of you know, like, yeah, because of people like taking me for granted and stuff, and really caring about what people would say and not. This year I kind of understood that no, I actually still cared about it. Now I don't, because I'm fully 100% changed. Because I thought, because for example, I think me and many people, I used to think that, and many people still think that, which is that you don't have to, like, you care because you feel it, right? I'm like, no, it's all right to care about it, but that's where the control comes, right? That's where the work is. Like, the work is in not like feeling what's happening to you, because then you're avoiding it, right? That was I kind of said in the beginning, was like, conflict avoidance is not conflict resolution. You're not resolving anything, you're just avoiding it. It's still there, right? And I think that's like, when you ignore it, right, so you don't feel it, it's wrong. You should feel it and then learn how to control it, right? And then you're resolving it, because you're showing yourself that you're capable of doing it, right? And you're showing yourself that you are capable of dealing with it, right? You're not holding it in and destroying your insides, right? All that anger. No, you are receiving it, feeling it, and letting it go, right? And that's how you deal with it, not by avoiding it. Because when you avoid it, you're not dealing with it. What you're doing is you're leaving it on the back of your mind, which is what I did all my childhood. Is like, okay, whatever, which I really did, back of my mind, and it stayed in the back of my mind for many, many, many years, right? Because it just didn't happen once; it happened a lot of times, right? Because that's the thing. For example, we think that by us avoiding it, that people won't do it again, but it's actually the quite opposite. Because if you don't do nothing about it, right, and if you continue to do the same thing with people, people will continue to do the same thing with you, because it just doesn't happen once. It happens 2, 3, 5, 10, as many times as people want it to happen. Because you never take a stand for yourself, right? And especially this year, like, I wanted, like, oh, people are going to respect me, they're going to respect me, they're going to respect me. But if I want the whole world to respect me, then I have no respect for myself. Like if I want everybody to love me and be my friend, I'm going to be an enemy to myself. I'm going to hate myself, right? So I had to really understand my value, my pure, real value. I had to understand that I'm worth more. But if I'm worth more, I need to act like that, right? And that's the thing. If you are worthy of more, then you need to act like you are worthy of more. And this has nothing to do with money. It has to do with values and morals and ethics, right? So if you are worthy of better people, don't waste your time with the people that are not worthy of you, because those people will always come back, and those people will always have something to say, and because that's how it is, right? And this goes for everybody, men, women, doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, that's beautifully said. Jeff, do you have anything to add in terms of like a compromise and negotiating before we move to another area?
Yeah, so Bruno had mentioned something in terms of like emotional intelligence and maturity. I think it's a lot of it does come from being able to get very uncomfortable with yourself and doing the difficult work to face our reality and a lot of the things that may have hurt us in our childhood. And that's really how we develop the emotional intelligence, to really understand ourselves on a deeper level, not just the surface of, you know, what's your favorite color, what are your hobbies, like how do I feel about things, how do I interact with the world around me. Bruno, I think when you and I talked previously, we talked a little bit about the stages of healing, and what I've kind of recognized for myself, and then what I teach my clients is, number one is awareness, number two is acceptance, number three is forgiveness, both of ourselves and anyone else involved. Number four is acceptance again, to accept that whatever happened in our past is always going to be a part of us, and it's not something we can go and extract and remove and just be done with. And then the fifth step in that healing process is to get comfortable with revisiting those events or those traumas over and over again in order to learn something new. As we grow and we learn, and our emotional intelligence improves or gets stronger, when we go back and revisit those things, we'll have new awareness, or we'll see how it correlates and connects to different areas of our life. And that gives us more self-awareness, self-control, self-mastery, where if we feel like we're done with an event and then we pack it up in a box and we put it back in the closet and we're like, I'm never going there again, we shut off the ability to connect that to anywhere else in our life. And the emotional intelligence really comes from being able to recognize that going into the discomfort of things, especially in the mind, will produce a lot of great results, especially in our relationships with our friends, our family, our romantic partners, and especially ourselves. Bruno, you had mentioned, right, like the relationship with self is the most important, because how we interact with ourselves, how we talk to ourselves, how we speak about ourselves will create the energy around how others treat us as well. If I'm not having any self-respect, why would anyone else respect me? If I have a high level of self-respect, then the people around me are held to that same standard, or they're not even allowed within my space or on my radar. It would just be like, yeah, like I'm not going to interact with that person because I respect myself, and I can recognize when someone is creating more chaos than I need to be a part of. And so, yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on what we were discussing and what Bruno has shared.
Oh, thank you so much. You know what comes for me? It's just like talking about, you can't just, like forget about the past. Obviously, we don't want to dwell on it, but it just reminds me of, like our spiral universe, right? So the more awareness we get, we are moving forward in that spiral, right? And it seems like we already learned all the lessons, right? Leaving behind everything. But then at one point, it just starts moving backwards, right? And we go back on that level somewhere where we thought we already learned everything and we accomplished everything. And again, there is something to revisit. There is something to work on. There is something to learn and get it on a deeper level for ourselves. So this is like that internal work. It's like never done. We are always learning. We always grow, and there is no such a thing. As long as we are breathing, there is something, for us to learn and to grow and keep working on ourselves, keep working on becoming the best version of ourselves.
This is also true in relationship. So we can do a lot of healing alone, single, And then when we step into a relationship, we may think, okay, we're done. But that's absolutely not the case. You have still more work to do, especially in partnership. What I found for myself to be true was when I would get into a new relationship, I would almost treat that person as if everything all my past exes had done was something that they did. And so I recognized in relationship, there's more healing to do in partnership, where being able to separate and say, this is not the experience I'm having now. This is my past coming up. And I'm projecting those insecurities and those traumas from past relationships onto this new individual. And so there's the ability to recognize and speak to that so that you can do additional healing with your partner. Those are elements you can't really do on your own.
So beautifully said. And what also comes to me is, you cannot just, if one partner is not healed and another one, yes, it's like, if that partner comes who didn't do the healing work, who doesn't have the awareness, comes into that relationship, it's very difficult for that relationship to survive, because that unhealed person is going to project all the fears, all the past experiences in this relationship, and it's difficult. So it's very important for partners to be aware and talk about it and work on it, because a relationship, it's constant work. The same way, we work in business or career, it's the same type of work. It's, like even when people are married, and, it becomes even more rigorous. And what about, what is your take on apologizing and forgiveness? Bruno.
Do I go first? Okay. Apologizing and forgiveness. When Jeff was saying, like, obviously the four stages of healing, acceptance, awareness, first awareness and acceptance and forgiveness of others, and then forgiveness of yourself. Obviously that's related, but better than that is, like, you cannot forget, you cannot forgive. It's not about forgetting, it's about forgiving, right? Because you shouldn't forget stuff, right? I was having this conversation with my father yesterday. Something happened in his life and he didn't understand why. It's like, but why? But this, but that. And I'm like, listen, you are creating questions in your mind that you can't answer by yourself, and you know that. But you're too much in your ego to want to fix it by yourself, and it's not even your problem. And then he said to me, oh, but I already know that it's not my fault. I'm like, okay, good. The first step is kind of like very well projected, and which is kind of like something that, people really need to understand, that sometimes it's not your fault. So now he knows that it's his fault. So then I ask him, so why do you keep having those questions? Oh, because I like to know. And I already knew what his problem was when he said like, he wants to know everything. He always wants to know the reason why. And there are some things that happen in your life that you don't know why they happen. They just happen, right? But especially, like, and then how can you forgive? Like, how are you going to fully forgive someone or something, right? If you don't even know the full reason behind it, right? And I think that's very challenging, because, like, I had that moment in my life where, so when I was like 17, I went to the UK, right? Which I'm right now on, but I'm gonna go tomorrow again. And I came to the UK. I didn't want to go to the UK. Like, everything happened not because I wanted to, but because I got dragged on that situation, right? And it ruined my ex, like my last relationship with my ex. It ruined everything. I lost the majority of my friends that were in Portugal. I came here. It was one of the best decisions that ever happened in my life, right? And it was taken for me, and I thank God and the universe every day. But at the time, like years ago, I didn't really understood why. I didn't know why, right? And I just got to a point of enlightenment where in my mind I was like, wait a second, maybe I don't have to know why, right? Maybe I just have to go with the flow, right? And a lot of people, they want everything. Like, a lot of people, they think that for them to be in full control, right, they have to know the how. Like, they want something, they pray for something, right? They want to attract something into their life, and they have to know the how, right? Because I want to have 100% control of things, right? But the things that people don't have control of, right? The same way, people don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. People don't know if like in 5 minutes you're gonna have a heart attack. They don't know if if they're gonna be run over by a car or a train or a truck or whatever, like the next day. They don't know, right? Does that the same way that happens, people, there's a lot of things that other people don't know, right? And I think like, again, like forgiving yourself, right, for not knowing how to deal with the situation back then, and fully in your mind go like, like I did my best, right? I mean, I never went through that. I have no idea why that happened, but it happened, and I tried my best, right? I didn't give up. I still did some things that I didn't, but I didn't know any better, right? And we're always growing, we're always learning, right? And it's important to show compassion, not pity, right? There's a difference between showing compassion and having pity, right? And the best thing we can do in those situations is having compassion for ourselves, and the worst things we can do in those situations is having pity for ourselves, right? And there's a fine line between compassion and pity, right? And it's really the way you react. It's really your intention behind it. And I think being compassionate is one of the greatest things people can do in those situations, because, again, you can't fight anger with anger. You can fight hate with hate. The only thing that takes out the darkness is the light, and the light will always be more powerful than the dark. That's why love will always be more powerful than hate and anger, right? And to then have that self-love for yourself and showing that compassion, and it's really taking it easy, because we're the ones who make it stressful for ourselves. We make it hard for ourselves the majority of the times. There has to be a point, and there is always a point, no matter how many days, weeks, months, or years that go by. There's always a point when people say, you know what, like, majority of the stuff that happened, again, I didn't know better. I knew what I knew. And if I keep pushing this with me, I'm never going to be able to run freely, and run at the pace, at my full pace that I can run, because I have this amount of weights and rocks and whatever called past problems and traumas that I just can't seem to let go of, right? So forgiving yourself, forgiving others, the real meaning of forgiveness actually is forgiving yourself, right? Because the moment you forgive yourself, you let go not only of how you felt, but how other people made you feel, let's say, right? So yeah, that's really it, right?
Awesome. Thank you. Jeff, what do you have to say about apology and forgiveness?
I think it goes back to the balance, the boundaries, and the compromise, where apologizing is much needed. At the same time, there are certain acts where an apology doesn't cut it. And depending on a person's boundaries, when you cross a certain line, there's no coming back from it. And so there are times when we can forgive, and then there's other times when it's more definitive. Like that's the line that I've drawn in the sand, where if you cross that, this is my time to step away from the relationship or the situation. At the same time, for the lesser things, for your everyday average, oh, I left things out, or I made a mess, or I didn't do my laundry. Those types of things, it's a very simple fix where we take accountability and we can apologize. I found in my romantic relationships that it's so supportive to take accountability rather than come up with an excuse and say, well, because of this, I did that. No, just saying, yeah, I dropped the ball there. I'm sorry, and I'm accountable for that. So apologizing in that way, where it's not making the situation or the circumstance external from ourselves, but saying, yeah, that was on me, and I dropped the ball here. That allows the other person to feel like their frustration is valid, to feel like their concern or whatever's bothering them is valid, so that they know that you're understanding where they're coming from. it goes kind of back to active listening as well, where if somebody's voicing a concern or a frustration or something that's bothering them, and we're taking accountability for that, it typically will dissolve the situation. And then you're back to a point where you can clearly communicate and have an understanding of, okay, underneath these layers of frustration, anger, whatever the argument's around, it's a lot of love. And if we're unable to apologize and take the accountability for it, then both sides are both defensive, and we're kind of combating and competing for something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. To be able to put that guard down and apologize allows for the other party to forgive and recognize that, hey, maybe I was potentially overreacting, or maybe it was a valid thing and I wasn't overreacting, but now the other person understands, and I feel better knowing it most likely won't happen again. If it happens again, then it becomes another conversation around the boundaries, and is my communication clear? And if it is, what's the breakdown? What's the issue here? Is that person not respecting what my needs are? And then it becomes either another conversation or a setting of boundaries.
That's so beautifully said. What comes for me is, apology is made by a strong person, because a lot of times the ignorant person is gonna say, I'm never gonna apologize, even if they were wrong in the situation. It takes the strong person to really accept the wrongdoing and actually stand up and say, you know what, I did it wrong, and I apologize for it, right? And as far as the forgiveness as well, like even sometimes people come from other relationships to the new relationships, and they carry all that luggage with themselves for years, right? So the point is, it's gonna always block them from building this beautiful, successful relationship with the current partner if they continuously going back and remembering what the other person did to them and how could they do that to them. And just that fact that they're just gonna keep themselves in that jail, and it's not gonna allow the new relationship to build on the level of their desires. So it's also important just to know that in order to welcome another relationship, you have to actually let go of all the things that hurt you in another relationship, and just understand that each one is different, and you could not project whatever happened to you in the past into the new relationship. And obviously, people have to work on the ability to apologize, recognize their wrongdoings, their mistakes, and forgiving each other, even if they decide they're not going to stay together after certain deeds, right? Like Jeff mentioned, if somebody crosses the line that your boundaries, right, and you cannot stay with that person, but at least you know that you do that forgiveness practice just for yourselves in the first place. So Jeff, what would be some tools, techniques for people to work through the relationship, to make it more successful, to make sure that they hear each other, and to make sure that they can resolve the conflict successfully?
The sacred pause, to recognize, hey, I'm triggered in a moment and my emotions are flaring up. Give me a minute to breathe and understand and look at what's coming up for me. What's my truth? And sometimes it's, hey, let's circle back in 5 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is. I need to sit with this. I need to understand it so that I'm not reactive. I'm not projecting. I'm not frustrated with you, but I can recognize what's going on with me so we can communicate. I find that that's an effective way, where it's not like, hey, go away and I don't want to talk to you. It's like, I need a moment, and asking for that to allow yourself to show up in a conversation and not have it lead directly to an argument.
So beautifully said. Yeah, I mean, the more we understand how to act in any given situation, right, rather than showing our reaction, it's so important, because when people really know how to communicate properly and clearly, any issues can be resolved, and any conflict could have a beautiful solution to that. Bruno, any last words?
Yeah, I mean, obviously forgive yourself before you forgive other people, because that's what real forgiveness is. Remember that, like when it comes to conflict resolution, there's no resolving conflict with other people if you can resolve the conflicts within yourself first. Remember that um, everything starts inside you, not outside you, right? And everything that starts inside you comes out of you, right? Our physical world um, is, I believe, 80% of the 20% we think about. And if you are stuck in some sort of like situation where you're not resolving your conflict, you're just really seeing more and more and more of the same in different people, in different places, in different objects, with different animals, with whatever, right? So make sure to, like, again, like, apologize, be a good person and apologize to yourself as well. But don't people please other people and always apologize them, because certain things do not deserve an apology, like Jeff said very well. But more than that, if one thing repeats multiple times, even if one thing is done once, don't apologize, or don't accept the apology. Let's say, right? Don't accept the apology because it's just going to repeat again, right? And again, also, your value, your ethics, and your morals matter more than anything else in the world, right? And people's values, ethics, and morals should matter for them more than for you. Okay, so take care of yourself first, and yeah, really take care of the way you feel, because it matters.
I would love to add that seek the help as well. Don't just sit with that if you see that it's not going anywhere in the direction that you desire. There are a lot of coaches. Jeff is also a great coach to help you with that. And me and Bruno, we just came up with this beautiful Facebook group for like-minded people. It's very important to stay in the community of people that are going to be supporting you, somebody who's not going to judge you, and somebody who's going to be with you all the way through. So we are inviting everybody. We are going to post in the comments the link. And we will be happy to see you at our Facebook community, and also reach out to Jeff for any consultation, because you are not alone on this journey. We are all in it together. All right. Have a beautiful, beautiful day, and stay well. And we wish you the fast and best resolutions in any of the conflict that you are having. Happy holidays. Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye.